Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out American Explores the Beautiful English Countryside. Learn with me.
Oh, shoot.
The look of someone who just realized she lost her keys in the English countryside. Yeah. Twice in the last week, I've approached my front door and my keys are not in my pocket, and I freak out. Luckily, they were just in my car, in the seat. They fell out of my pocket, but that's a scary feeling. Damn. She's out in the countryside.
Okay, where did I leave them? Someone help me. Oh god, this is... Okay, I found them. Oh, jeez.
Wow, they're in the dirt.
Welcome to the English countryside.
Nice. That music makes me feel like it's America.
As an American living in England, I've become pretty familiar with the English countryside, though also in some ways not familiar at all because it's vast. About 90% of England is considered to be countryside. Which brings up
90%?
Another interesting point. People all over the world talk about the English countryside, but it seems that some foreigners are still a little confused on where exactly it is. This internet poster says, "British folk, what is the English countryside?" A podcast I'm listening to mentioned it, and it's a very evocative concept. But I realized I don't know practically what it is. Is it a place, multiple places, an activity, or a state of mind? Well, random internet philosopher, the easy definition is that the countryside isn't something like Disneyland that you buy a ticket and show up to while a man in a mouse costume greets you. Nor is it an altered state of consciousness. Unless you're talking about the feeling of being on mile 8 on what was supposed to be a 2-mile hike and you forgot to pack snacks.
I would just assume the English countryside is in England, and it's not London. It's not Manchester or Liverpool or Birmingham or Bristol or Brighton or Dover or Grimsby or Leeds or a city. It's all the stuff in between.
No, the English countryside is all the stuff that isn't in the towns or cities. It's the farming
just
fields.
said.
It's the forests and the moorlands. You don't really go to the countryside. It's just all around you. And in this video, we're going to learn what makes England's countryside so unique. First, let's rewind a little bit. No, further than 1992. Keep going. Stop there. About 8,000 BC, give or take a few years. This was the end of the last ice age, and as the weather warmed, forests expanded. At this point in time, England was covered in forests, small grasslands, and tundra. So how did we end up with the fields that are so recognizable in today's landscape? For that, we can thank the farmers of about 4,500 BC. The introduction of farming meant that a lot of those forests began to be cleared. Prior to that, the lifestyle was hunting and gathering, which worked really well within the natural makeup of the land without too many changes. It doesn't mean that all of the forests disappeared completely. There are still notable ones around, like the New Forest and Epping Forest. They're just not as expansive as they used to be.
This is a very different video for Kaylin. There's a lot of cuts. That seems like a lot of work to make this. Like find a spot, film a couple sentences, cut, find another location, set it up, film a couple sentences. It's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So what I've gathered so far is that the cleared parts are not naturally cleared. Those are human clearances. Plains, meadows. These cows look small to me. Small cows.
It doesn't mean that all of the forest disappeared completely. There are still notable ones around, like the New Forest and Epping Forest. They're just not as expansive as they used to be. But now, we need to fast forward to the Middle Ages. Now, these fields are operated within what's known as a feudal system. This is an open field system where peasant farmers are assigned a narrow strip of land to grow crops. And in exchange for the right to grow crops on this small patch of land, they would in turn pay a percentage to the aristocracy. Other areas would be held in common as grazing land. The Black Plague really sped up the process as it wiped out much of the population. Many of these farms were then bought by individuals who enclosed their properties. In more recent times, just over 100 years ago, we'd conquered the Black Plague, but there was another threat to the English countryside looming, and that was houses. Well, houses and the people who wanted to live in them. Residential growth in the 1900s made many people worried that the English countryside would disappear. And, as one person put it, will only be visible through a continuous hedge of houses and bungalows. Development was needed, yes, but some town planners saw the writing on the proverbial hedgerow and decided to form a committee to preserve the countryside. This This brings about
Okay.
CPRE, Council for the Preservation of Rural England. And since 1926, they've been fighting to preserve the countryside and everyone and everything that depends on
That's
it.
good, right?
Over the years, multiple acts and regulations have been put in place to protect this land. This includes the National Parks and Access to the Countryside Act of 1949, which laid the groundwork for the creation of national parks as well as areas of outstanding natural beauty.
That seems very forward-thinking. Even in 1949, before it was cool to be an environmentalist, right? This is good. It's a good thing, right? Seems like a good thing.
Laid the groundwork for the creation of national parks as well as areas of outstanding natural beauty. It also addressed public right-of-way and access to land, which we'll get to in a second. The English countryside is really the gem in England's crown. It's the morning fog on a countryside lane. It's the walk home from the village pub. It's fields bursting with color that stretch out further than your eye can even see.
Beautiful.
It's ancient trees and woodlands, hedges filled with tiny fruits and the sounds of birds. It's gentle streams and wild, rugged hills and so much in between. And one of the things that stands out the most, it's green. Very green. I don't mean your average run-of-the-mill green. I mean green. A green that can only come from a place with abundant rainfall. You see, England is met with winds from the west, and those winds have traveled across a large amount of the Atlantic Ocean, picking up moisture along the way. When it reaches land, the air has to rise because the land sticks up out of the sea. And when the air rises, it cools down, meaning no more room for the moisture, meaning rain. And then, green. When you compare actual rainfall amounts, it doesn't necessarily rain that much more in England than it does in other countries, but the rain here tends to be drizzly and longer lasting as opposed to intense one-off thunderstorms. This can really
Yeah, we got a lot of intense one-off thunderstorms in America, especially in Florida. I think like the Northwest United States gets the more Britishy rain sustained. Some of these places that she's filming in, to me, look like where I'm from, the Southeast United States. Like this looks like it could be in Georgia. Probably similar amount of rainfall, probably similar trees and stuff.
And those winds have traveled across a large amount of the Atlantic Ocean, picking up moisture along the way. When it reaches land, the air has to rise because the land sticks up out of the sea. And when the air rises, it cools down, meaning no more room for the moisture, meaning rain. And then, green. When you compare actual rainfall amounts, it doesn't necessarily rain that much more in England than it does in other countries, but the rain here tends to be drizzly and longer lasting as opposed to intense one-off thunderstorms. This can really easily mess up your barbecue plans, but it means the English countryside is one of the most beautiful places in the world because of it, which is hard to keep in mind when your burger bun is drenched, but easier to appreciate when you get out into the fresh air and appreciate the greenery around you. Another fascinating feature about the English countryside is the public footpath. And if you're English, you might be wondering what's so fascinating about that. Well, this is a feature that many people in other countries don't get to experience, the public access or right-of-way through private land. Paths like these connect the countryside together, so you never have to worry about trespassing while you're walking, rambling, or running through various fields and countryside destinations. Many public footpaths used today have been in use for hundreds, if not thousands of years. At one point in time, travel by foot was the only option, and people still had to move from place to place. Some of these pathways date back to 5000 BC, as traders used them to move from tribe to tribe.
Really?
You've also got Roman roads and tracks, as well as those started by the Anglo-Saxons.
5,000 BC. Wow. Yeah, we don't have anything like that in America. I mean, we have trails. I think the Appalachian Trail is pretty far, like hundreds of miles, but we definitely don't have the right to walk onto private land because of a footpath that's been around for thousands of years. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't think Americans would let this happen. Envisioning, a farmer with a shotgun saying, "Get off my land." It happens. Happens a lot. Some guy just shot a woman. Maybe this was a year ago or so, or a few years ago. This woman pulls up into his driveway. She got the wrong address. I think she was delivering food or something. And the guy shot her from his front porch. Like, "Get off my land." She didn't know she was in the wrong spot. I think he's in prison now. Anyway, I don't think it would work here, but I admire that it works over there.
And people still had to move from place to place. Some of these pathways date back to 5000 BC, as traders used them to move from tribe to tribe. You've also got Roman roads and tracks, as well as those started by the
That's so
Anglo-Saxons.
cool.
Now,
Roman
originally,
roads.
footpaths like these were not designated by law. Instead, they were unofficially considered to be public based on evidence of public use over the years. But with more and more people privately owning land, something needed to be done to make sure that these public footpaths stayed public. This was part of the National Parks and Access to the Countryside Act of 1949. It created what was known as the definitive map, which is a legal record of the public rights of way. The map is updated by local councils, and it can actually be used as evidence in court. It's not called the definitive map for nothing.
So if someone said, "Get off my land," they got proof it's public, right? It holds up in court. That's actually a lot of pathways. I wonder if I could find this map. CPRE. Know your pathways. Reject all cookies. Thank you. Show me the map. Show me the map. The map is too hard to find. The map should be easier to find than that. Maybe I'm not looking in the right spot, but come on.
Created what was known as the definitive map, which is a legal record of the public rights of way. The map is updated by local councils, and it can actually be used as evidence in court. It's not called the definitive map for nothing. Over the years, there have also been campaigns to help save public paths that haven't been added to the definitive map. One of these was the Don't Lose Your Way campaign in 2020 that helped save over 40,000 miles of public pathways.
40,000
Another iconic
miles.
slice of English countryside life is what is known as a hedgerow. These are not hedgerows, these are sheep, but in total, Britain has over 430,000 miles of hedgerows, many of them in England. And often these hedgerows go back as far as 800 years. They were first planted around fields to keep in grazing livestock, like these, and to be boundary lines between farms.
Okay.
They come in all shapes and sizes, often being a mix of shrub and tree species like hawthorn, blackthorn, hazel, and ash.
I've seen these hedgerows, and I've always wondered exactly what a hedgerow was because it's a lyric in a Led Zeppelin song. Stairway to Heaven, I think. That looks so much better than what we have in America. We have like a fence or barbed wire fence or something like that to keep the livestock fenced off. That's so much better. It looks better. It's a natural thing. I don't know if it's as effective as barbed wire, but it looks good.
Medieval hedges are usually curved at the end so that the oxen could turn a plow, but the hedgerow planted around the 18th and 19th century tend to be straight. To lay a hedgerow is a
They have fences and that stuff. That's nice.
But the hedgerow planted around the 18th and 19th century tend to be straight. To lay a hedgerow is a skill, and done carefully by partially cutting the stems and bending the trunks over sideways. There are actually annual hedge laying competitions in the UK, and the National Hedge Laying Society recognizes more than 30 styles of traditional hedge. One of the best parts of hedgerows is that they're great for wildlife, attracting woodland species, insects, lizards, mosses, fungi, birds, mice, and more.
Way better than a barbed wire fence, y'all. Barbed wire fences don't do that. These hedgerows seem like they take a long time to make proper, though, because that vine thing has to grow all around it. I didn't know there was like a technique to it. That's so amazing. Look at that. Wow, that must take so long to fill in. Wow.
One of the best parts of hedgerows is that they're great for wildlife, attracting woodland species, insects, lizards, mosses, fungi, birds, mice, and more. Bats and moths also use hedgerows as spatial cues to move across the landscape. And, did you know, the hedgerows suck carbon out of the atmosphere to help reduce agricultural emissions.
Huh, I didn't
You
know
might
that.
drive or walk
Yeah.
past a hedgerow without a second thought, but they're doing a lot of good for the countryside. Unfortunately, hedgerows have been removed at a faster rate than they've been planted since World War II. This is due to a couple of things like changes in farming practices and damage and neglect, but it's
Bigger
not good for the
fields.
wildlife that depend on them. If you're interested in learning more about how to protect the hedgerows, you can do your part by going to Natural England's guidance on managing hedgerows, and the National Hedge Laying Society offers courses across the UK on the skill of hedge laying.
I think people should be able to remove a hedgerow if it's their land. Maybe that's the American in me. My land.
And that brings me to my final point. In some ways, the English countryside is beautiful because it was designed to be this way. Unlike some natural areas that are completely untouched, the English countryside is touched. First by the ancient footpaths of England's earliest settlers, then by precisely designed hedgerows to divide up the land. But that's part of the charm. It's Mother Nature meets human history. It's wild animals finding homes in manicured hedgerows. It's not untamed beauty, but beauty created and cultivated by the people who have lived here for thousands of years.
That's amazing.
And it's waiting for you to explore. Just make sure to leave no trace, treat it with care, and don't forget to pack the snacks. Or maybe that's just the American in me talking. Hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, I guess I always just thought that the English countryside was natural, untouched. To some degree, I mean, it's been occupied by people for so long, it's like, it's gotta be touched, but I thought it was just sort of like, let it run free. I didn't realize it was so curated and fostered. It's pretty neat. It's probably pretty, I think it would be a really cool experience to go on a hike on an old Roman road, knowing that people have been walking along there for thousands of years. That's wild. Y'all be sure to go to Girl Gone London and like and subscribe. Be sure to check out my other reaction channel, JJLA Reacts Music. Give me a like and subscribe there, why not? Well, this was great. I like that it's being protected and preserved, you know? Feels like it should be. At the same time, if I buy a field, I want to be able to do whatever I want in that field. Right? It's my field. Well, y'all, thanks for watching this with me. I'd like to say thanks to my patrons. Thanks to my Buy Me Coffee folks. Thank y'all for watching this with me. And I'll see you next time. Later.